Good evening, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure and honour to introduce 4 parents who have joined us today from all over Australia. I have here Louise, who is mum to Dylan, Sam, father of Caleb, Renee, mum to Hudson, Holly and Austin, and Nicole, mother of Toby. It takes a lot to be here on a day like today. It's a huge undertaking, both emotionally, logistically, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for being here and so generously sharing your insights with us. Louise, I'd like to come to you first. You've been on this road for a very long time. Can you tell us a little bit about what brings you here today?
My son, Dylan, passed away in 2015 from childhood dementia. He was 12 and a half and should have been celebrating his 21st birthday this year. 9 years and nothing has changed in regards to the management, treatment, and there's no hint whatsoever on the horizon for a cure. And in my professional role, I am assisting families who are affected by childhood dementia, and I'm having to sit there with them as they accept that their children are going to die. And while I don't want to take away from other childhood conditions, it seems really unfair that our children aren't being recognised. No one's paying attention while we're seeing this amazing progress with some other conditions.
Thank you, Louise. As we've already heard today, the absence of effective treatments and cures means that all of these children that are diagnosed with these conditions that cause childhood dementia will sadly die prematurely. There is 0 survivorship in this cohort. Sam, what did the lack of treatments mean for your son Caleb, and what was the impact of that throughout your whole family?
So my son Caleb passed away 3 years and 1 month ago. The lack of treatment, the difficulty that we had with accessing diagnosis and effective therapies made that journey, which was already a difficult journey, of course it was, but it made it so much harder than it probably needed to be, certainly than it needed to be. Megan talked a little bit about the sorts of diagnosis and prognosis that these children have, but it's really important to understand that at the end of these children's life, it can be almost impossibly hard. Caleb, at the end of his life, was unable to move, he was unable to see, he was unable to swallow, and he was unable to recognise anybody in his family. And I often think back and regret the amount of time that we spent when he could still smile, when he could still turn his head, when he could still eat ice cream, the amount of time that we spent on waiting lists and in waiting rooms, waiting for somebody to help us navigate this system or to help us access the sorts of treatments and therapies that could have improved his quality of life. These are the sorts of ordinary administrative decisions that the people in this room make about who accesses healthcare, how they access healthcare, disability supports, and those sorts of things that are failing these children to whom we have a real special responsibility. They cannot be treated as though they're an ordinary patient because they just simply aren't.
Thank you, Sam. Nicole, your son Toby is currently living with childhood dementia. Can you share with us a little bit about what his healthcare looks like?
So my son Toby will be 10 in November, and he has a very rare syndrome called Cockayne syndrome, which is a form of childhood dementia. Where to start? Our lives are just swallowed and just overtaken with medical appointments. It's a multi-systemic disease that Toby has, which means we have so many doctors, specialists, therapists in the mix with Toby. As such, I don't work because I'm sort of held captive really to an appointment system that I have no say about. I receive a letter in the letterbox and it tells me when I need to go, and I have just no flexibility in that. And a lot of the times I will go to these appointments. It'll be someone different every time. They've never heard of his syndrome, certainly not childhood dementia. I actually found that out through a mother, not attached to the health system, that his syndrome is a form of childhood dementia. So trying to access information by anyone who knows anything is just notoriously difficult, to the point where we fundraise to go to the United Kingdom and access people overseas who actually do know what's going on with my child, so that I can deliver that information back to his medical team here. And it's not always received well, or they're not bothered to get in contact with these people that I've met personally who want to be contacted and develop rapport and relationship. So it leaves me feeling that I can't trust the health system that essentially is there to look after my child, because mistakes have been made, and it's a very frightening and stressful place. So my anxiety levels and cortisol levels are through the roof because his life's in my hands.
Can you explain that a little bit more, Nicole? What's your role in Toby's healthcare?
Everything. So I did have a doctor say, well, you become the expert, and I kind of just went with that. But right now, where I'm at a few years down the line, he only got diagnosed with his actual syndrome 3 years ago. I think, how dare you? You are the scientist. You are the medical professional, not me. I'm the mother. You know? To put that on me. I'm an early childhood teacher, or was. But if I don't get his medical care right, he will die even sooner than his time. You know, come on.
Louise, I know you have your thoughts on this huge stress and strain that's put on mums especially, but parents. What are you thinking about as Nicole shares this story?
Childhood dementia doesn't just affect the child, it impacts everyone involved. And we're talking the parents, siblings. The impact on siblings it's another whole gamut on its own. The stress that parents are put under actually impacts your own health and well-being, and that was something that was said to me at the time Dylan was diagnosed, is that my life will be cut short. Years of not sleeping, and when we say not sleeping, we don't mean they're awake for an hour or two. We're talking about, depending on the condition, they'll be jumping around active all night. So that just impacts your body psychologically. I actually have a heart condition and 2 autoimmune conditions now from the impact of caring for Dylan, and to hear that the same thing is happening continually, and there's this cohort, like thousands of these kids are suffering, and the parents are doing it really, really tough.
Thank you. Renee, I can see you there agreeing with everything that's said, and Nicole, as she was talking, tell us about what's happening for your family.
So I am a solo mother of 3 children. My youngest child was actually diagnosed first at 8 months old, and my older 2 children were diagnosed quite quickly afterwards just by blood test. They were healthy and they were immediately written off as terminally ill children with no hope, no cure, no treatment. Take them home and love them. That was 2019, and my journey so far has been exactly that. I've had nothing new to offer them. I've had nothing but roadblocks with the medical system, with Centrelink, with the education department. I've just been left to forge this path on my own, and I have nowhere to go and nowhere to turn, and everything on the line.
Thanks, Renee. We've heard a lot about the lack of cures, knowledge, specialist care in the health system. It doesn't end there. I'd like to turn the attention to the NDIS. We know that the NDIS is a lifeline for families and that it has the potential to be excellent with just a small number of changes. But right now, there are many, many challenges that families face on a daily basis. Nicole, you're dealing with that very much on a daily basis, and I've been taking calls this afternoon. Can you give us a sense of what you've experienced with the NDIS?
First of all, I'm just extremely grateful that we have a scheme that is there to provide support to those living with the most complex disabilities. but it is very challenging. Living with a regressive neurodegenerative disease that people just simply are not educated about. We don't fit in any box. People don't have a frame of reference for us. So when we apply for NDIS or go to a plan review, we're expected to make goals. Some of them just simply will never be achievable. Or if we do meet those goals, trying to educate the delegate that they might meet that goal, but they're going to lose it as well because this is degenerative. And I'm sort of expected to have a crystal ball to know what Toby's going to need in the next 12 months. I simply don't know. My child now has a cochlear implant. I didn't know 12 months ago that he'd be having that. And he's sort of told, well, you can go to change of circumstances. Now, I've just done this. So we started this ball rolling, but because there's so many people involved with Toby, to compile the evidence from all these people is an extremely lengthy process. By the time that all got submitted to NDIS and we actually had an appointment with the delegate, it was no sooner than what his plan review was. It literally took that long. So that's really frightening as a parent that if next week my child fails to walk at all, which could happen and does happen with children with his disease, and I need a wheelchair or something, for example, and I'm having to apply for a change of circumstances, it's very lengthy. So I think we need acknowledgement really that this is a regressive disease here, and we need to educate people on what that actually looks like and that our needs are different.
Thank you. So beginning to look a little to the future and, considering what these systems, how they might respond better. Renee, I'm going to go to you first, and I can't imagine how it is to manage one child with a complex degenerative condition, and you have 3. This is a personal question. But I'm wondering, what are your hopes and concerns for the future of your children?
I hope that days like today are going to make a difference, and that difference is going to happen quick enough to benefit my children and our children. My concern is that I'm going to lose all of my children in horrific, slow motion, painful circumstances, and they're also going to have to witness each other go through that and then go through it themselves. My concerns, what happens to me afterwards, what happens to my family, what happens to our future.
Thank you. Sam, it's incredible for bereaved families like yourself, Louise, to still be out there advocating for change. And I know we have a number of bereaved families in the room today. Can you help share with us and help us understand what it is that brings you here?
I can try. After Caleb died and we were getting ready for his funeral and we were reflecting back on his life and what it meant to be his parents, one of the things that kind of struck me was, and this is very counterintuitive for a parent, but Caleb really, he wasn't there to learn. You kind of imagine that you'll instruct your children, you'll teach them and share all the things that you love and the passions that you have. Dementia will steal that from your children. Stole that from Caleb, but what he did was he taught us so much strength and resilience. So I'm here trying to share that. Days like today, I get to still be Caleb's dad, and that's special to me. The work that Gail and Megan are doing to try and make sure that the lessons of Caleb's life, of his suffering, and it was suffering, the lessons of his suffering can be heard, can be listened to by people who have the power to make changes, and they're not impossible changes. That's important, and I'm grateful that I have this opportunity, but I hope that you will listen, that you'll read this report, that you'll think about our stories and our children, because we can do better. We can.
Thank you, Sam. And following up on your point, and just to bring this session to a close, we are here in Parliament House with people who have the power to make change. I'm going to come to each one of you with just a final question, if you can answer it fairly briefly, so that these people here can hear exactly what you think. What is the change that you most want to see? Louise, I'll come to you first.
What we need is committed action. We need funding and the support of those that have the power to help. We need government and funding bodies, research organisations, pharmaceutical companies to all accept that childhood dementia exists and commit to action so that we can see some progress in the management of these special children. We can get some treatment so that they don't have to suffer. And down the track, it would be amazing. And I still hold out the hope that we will see a change from that 100% of them dying to them having some quality of life and living. And it is possible because we've seen it done with other conditions. We've seen it done with childhood cancer, cystic fibrosis. These children that were dying are now living. And our cohort of children, it's a similar number, but no one's known about it or doing anything. And that's what we need. We need a commitment to action.
Thank you, Louise. Nicole, over to you.
I think the first step is actually acknowledgement that childhood dementia exists and that healthcare providers need to receive further education about how to best treat the children and support the families, because when a child is diagnosed with childhood dementia, the whole family suffers. Your marriage takes a battering and your other children are profoundly affected for the rest of their lives. So we need coordinated action and a clear pathway forward, not just for the healthcare system, but all of those other supports, and for mental health supports and just daily supports for the families as well, because parts of us are dying too.
Thank you, Nicole. Sam, the same question to you. One change that you would like to see happen?
Nicole beautifully talked about all of the different things that you need to become an expert in. You need to become an expert in palliative care and disability supports and the health system and the pharmaceutical benefits and charities and all sorts of this giant ecosystem, which is totally unfamiliar to you. And the clock is ticking all the time, and you're very, very mindful of that. So while the one change I would make, if we could snap our fingers and we could cure these diseases, that's not realistic and that's not within the power of the people in this room. But Caleb was often viewed as the only person that they would, anyone that we encountered had ever met that had the condition that he had, infantile neuroaxonal dystrophy. But in fact, he was one of thousands of children with dementia. And if you created specialization and expertise within dementia so that he could be seen by the right people at the right time, taken down the right pathways and treated with the sort of urgency that he required, that he always required, rather than just another patient in a system with a condition that no one had ever heard of, then that is something that is achievable, that's practical, and that is something that we owe these children. As I said, we really do have a special responsibility to these children and the suffering that they will go through to ease it. That is achievable.
Thank you, Sam. And finally, over to you, Renee.
I think I'll just reiterate that we are normal people that have been thrown into this world. You know, we don't have medical backgrounds. We aren't public speakers, but we're standing in front of you here with everything to lose. And I should be able to trust that I don't have to be my child's biggest advocate. I should be home with my children today and kissing them goodnight and making the most of every moment, not here battling for their their basic rights.
Thank you. As Renee just said, you guys are all just normal people who have to face some of the most tragic circumstances that any of us can imagine. We desperately need change, and I think you've articulated that a lot of those changes are simple, that could make huge amounts of difference to families who are living this right now. Thank you for sharing your experiences so generously. We know it is not easy. And thank you for inspiring us to make the change that is so desperately needed.